The courtroom smelled like paper and cold air, that sterile, recycled chill that never quite warms, no matter how many bodies fill the benches. I sat at the petitioner's table with my hands folded so tightly my knuckles had gone pale. The wood edge pressed into my ribs every time I breathed, but I didn't move. If I moved, I thought I might break apart in front of everyone. Across the aisle, Daniel leaned toward his attorney, whispering with that same calm confidence he'd worn for months, the look that said this was already decided, already won. He didn't look at me. He hadn't really looked at me since the day he filed. I watched him anyway. The man I married. The man who once traced circles on my wrist in the dark and promised, "I'm always on your side." Now he wouldn't even meet my eyes. My lawyer, Karen, touched my sleeve lightly. "You okay?" I nodded, though the motion felt mechanical. Yes. I wasn't okay. I was unraveling inside a beige courtroom under fluorescent lights while strangers prepared to dissect my life into exhibits. The judge shuffled papers. "Counsel, are we ready to proceed?" Daniel's attorney stood smoothly. "Yes, Your Honor." Karen rose beside me. "Ready for the petitioner, Your Honor." The room settled into that anticipatory hush, the kind where every cough echoes. My heart beat too loud. We were at the point I dreaded for weeks. Daniel's side had already painted me as unstable, impulsive, emotionally volatile, a narrative constructed carefully, clinically, to justify what he'd done, to justify leaving, to justify everything else. Karen had warned me, they'll try to make you small. I felt small. Daniel's lawyer began, voice polished. "Your Honor, the respondent maintains that the petitioner's allegations are unsupported by credible evidence and that—" Karen stood. "Objection. Mischaracterizes the evidentiary record." "Sustained," the judge said mildly. "Proceed to witnesses." My stomach twisted. This was it. Daniel's lawyer called their final witness, a financial consultant who spoke in neutral jargon about accounts, transfers, timelines. Numbers floated through the air, stripped of context, designed to sound orderly and benign. I stared at the table, at the thin line in the wood grain, at my wedding ring lying in my bag, at the space where my life had cracked open. When the testimony ended, Daniel's attorney sat, satisfied. Karen leaned toward me. "We're up." I swallowed. "Okay." But instead of standing immediately, she remained still for a beat, like she was waiting for something. Then she rose. "Your Honor," she said, voice steady, "the petitioner calls one additional witness." Daniel's attorney frowned. "We were not provided notice of any further witnesses." Karen didn't look at him. "The witness became available only this morning." My pulse jumped. The judge lifted his brows slightly. "Counsel?" Karen met his gaze. "We request leave to call a surprise witness relevant to credibility and material facts previously disputed." The courtroom shifted, that subtle ripple of interest moving through spectators. Daniel turned slightly, finally glancing at me. For the first time all morning, his composure faltered just a flicker, a crease between his brows. My stomach flipped. What was happening? The judge considered, then nodded. "I'll allow limited testimony. Call your witness." Karen turned toward the door. "Please bring in Miss Alvarez." The name meant nothing to me. But across the aisle, Daniel froze. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse. His shoulders locked mid-breath. Color drained from his face. His attorney's pen stopped moving. A sound slipped into the room, the door opening. Every head turned. I turned last. And the moment she stepped inside, I felt the air leave my lungs. Because I knew her. Not by name, by memory. By the shape of a moment Daniel had once dismissed, minimized, explained away. She walked slowly to the stand, eyes forward, hands clasped, composed but pale, like someone stepping into something inevitable. Karen spoke gently. "Please state your name for the record." The woman swallowed. Marisol Alvarez. Daniel's attorney stood fast. Objection, Your Honor. We have no foundation for... Overruled, the judge said. Proceed. Karen approached the stand. My heart roared. Ms. Alvarez, do you recognize the respondent, Daniel Hart? Her eyes flicked toward him. He looked like a man watching a ghost. Yes, she said softly. I do. Karen's voice lowered. Can you tell the court how? The woman hesitated. Daniel whispered harshly to his lawyer. No. His lawyer's face had gone tight, calculating. Karen waited. The silence stretched. And then, Marisol Alvarez looked directly at me. Not at the judge, not at Daniel. At me. Her eyes shone with something that felt like apology. I know him, she said quietly, because last year I worked with him. The room held its breath. Daniel's attorney rose again. Your Honor! Karen spoke over him. Ms. Alvarez, did your work with Mr. Hart remain strictly professional? The woman's fingers tightened together. Daniel's chair scraped. Stop, he said hoarsely. But the judge's voice cut through. Mr. Hart, sit down. He didn't move. My heart slammed against my ribs. Karen's voice stayed calm. Ms. Alvarez? The woman inhaled shakily. And in that suspended second, with Daniel standing half-risen, his lawyer pale, the courtroom frozen, she opened her mouth to answer. No, she said. The word barely carried, but it landed like something dropped from a height. A murmur rippled through the courtroom, quickly swallowed by the judge's sharp look, but I didn't hear any of it clearly. All I heard was the echo of that single syllable vibrating somewhere deep inside my chest. No. Not professional, not just work. My vision tunneled slightly, edges blurring. Daniel's voice came out rough. Your Honor, this is irrelevant. Karen didn't even look at him. Miss Alvarez, please explain the nature of your relationship with Mr. Hart. The woman's throat worked. She glanced once more at Daniel. He shook his head almost imperceptibly. A warning? A plea? Or both? Her eyes dropped to her hands. We met during a consulting project his firm hired me for. Karen's tone stayed gentle. And did your relationship extend beyond that project? Silence. Daniel's chair legs scraped again as he shifted. His attorney grabbed his sleeve. Hiss, do not speak. The courtroom air thickened, everyone waiting, leaning into the moment. Marisol's voice trembled. Yes. My stomach lurched. But Karen didn't stop there. And when did this relationship begin? Marisol swallowed. About 14 months ago. 14. My mind moved automatically, counting backward, landing on dates, seasons, memories. I saw flashes. Daniel late at the office, unexplained trips, the way he'd grown distant before he'd ever filed. Karen's next question came carefully. At that time, were you aware that Mr. Hart was married? Yes, she whispered. A soft intake of breath passed through the gallery. I didn't breathe at all. Karen nodded slightly. Did Mr. Hart represent himself to you as separated? Marisol hesitated. Daniel said sharply, Don't. The judge's gavel struck. Mr. Hart, you will remain silent. Daniel sank back, face ashen. Marisol's eyes filled. No. Karen let the words settle. So you understood he was living with his wife, she said quietly. Yes. The floor seemed to tilt under me. The timeline I'd been given, the narrative of a marriage already broken, already ending, cracked down the middle. Karen took a step closer. Ms. Alvarez, did your relationship with Mr. Hart remain private? Marisol nodded faintly. Yes. Why? Her lips parted, closed, parted again. She looked at me, and there it was again, that apology, raw and human and unbearable. Because, she said, voice shaking, he told me it had to be. Daniel's attorney shot up. Your Honor, we object to the characterization. Overruled, the judge said. Karen's gaze sharpened slightly. Ms. Alvarez, did Mr. Hart ever discuss his marriage with you? Daniel's hand slammed lightly on the table. Enough! Mr. Hart, the judge warned, but the sound had already shattered something fragile in the room. Marisol flinched. Karen didn't relent. Did he? A tear slid down Marisol's cheek. Yes. My pulse pounded in my ears. What did he say? The courtroom held still, the way a room does before glass breaks. Marisol's fingers twisted together, knuckles white. He said, she whispered, that she depended on him. My chest tightened painfully. Karen's voice softened even more. She? Marisol nodded, her eyes still on me. His wife. The word struck like a blow. Karen continued. Did he intend to remain married? Daniel's voice came out strangled. Stop! But Marisol spoke anyway. He said he couldn't leave yet because of finances. A ripple moved through the courtroom again, sharper this time. Karen's eyes flicked once toward the judge, then back. Finances how? Marisol hesitated. Daniel stood abruptly. I object to this entire... Sit down, the judge said, firm now. Daniel didn't move. My heart hammered violently. I felt it in my throat. Karen's voice stayed calm. Ms. Alvarez? The woman inhaled shakily. And in that suspended second, with Daniel standing half-risen, his lawyer pale, the courtroom frozen, she opened her mouth to answer.
Marisol whispered, voice barely steady, that if he divorced her too soon, he'd lose everything. The words fell into the room like glass shattering underwater, muffled, distorted, but unmistakably catastrophic. My lungs locked. Lose everything. For a split second, I didn't understand what I was hearing. My brain tried to reject it, to slide past it, to cling to the version of events Daniel had fed me for months, that we were already broken, already ending, already past saving. But this was different. This wasn't distance. This wasn't incompatibility. This was calculation. Karen didn't move. Everything meaning... Marisol's hands trembled in her lap. His assets, his firm shares, the house, accounts. She swallowed. He said the timing mattered. A sound escaped me before I could stop it. Small, raw, somewhere between breath and pain. Daniel's head snapped toward me. Our eyes met. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw fear in his. Not anger. Not irritation. Fear. Your Honor, his attorney said quickly, voice tight, we object to the speculative testimony. Karen spoke over him. Miss Alvarez, did Mr. Hart describe a specific time frame? Marisol nodded faintly. Yes. The room leaned closer. Daniel whispered hoarse, Don't do this. She closed her eyes for a moment, like someone stepping off a ledge. He said, she murmured, that once certain accounts were restructured, he'd file. My stomach dropped. Karen's voice sharpened just slightly. Restructured how? Daniel slammed his hand flat on the table. Enough! The sound cracked through the courtroom. The judge's gavel followed instantly. Mr. Hart? But the damage was done. Every face had turned. Every breath held. Daniel stood there, chest heaving, color drained completely now, the composed man from this morning gone, replaced by someone cornered. Karen didn't look at him. Miss Alvarez, did Mr. Hart ever indicate who controlled those assets before this restructuring? The silence that followed felt endless. Marisol's gaze lifted slowly. To me. Her expression broke open. Grief, guilt, something like pity. Yes, she said. My heart stopped. Karen's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Who? Daniel's chair scraped violently as he pushed back. I will not sit here and... Mr. Hart, you will sit down, the judge snapped. But he didn't. because Marisol had already opened her mouth, and in that suspended, irreversible instant, with Daniel frozen mid-motion, his attorney reaching for him, the courtroom breathless, she spoke my name.
It didn't sound like mine when she said it. It sounded fragile, exposed, like something private dragged into fluorescent light. A wave of soundless pressure crashed through my chest. Not quite shock, not quite pain, something deeper, colder. The room seemed to tilt again, gravity pulling in the wrong direction. Karen didn't react outwardly, but I felt her hand slide onto the table beside mine, steadying. "Ms. Alvarez," she said quietly, "to be clear, you're stating that prior to any restructuring, the assets Mr. Hart discussed were controlled by—" Marisol's eyes stayed on me. "His wife," she said. The word struck harder than anything else had. Not her, not the petitioner, not the spouse. His wife. Me. A murmur broke across the gallery before the judge's gavel snapped again. "Order." Daniel's attorney was already on his feet. "Your Honor, we move to strike." "Denied," the judge said. Daniel was still standing. I could feel him without looking, the heat of his presence, the tension radiating across the aisle. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to turn. I didn't. Karen's voice remained calm, precise. "Ms. Alvarez, did Mr. Hart specify what restructuring he intended?" Marisol hesitated. Daniel's voice came out raw. "Don't." It wasn't the command from before. It was something else now. Desperation. Marisol's hands shook visibly. "He said he was moving things into separate entities, trusts, accounts that—" She stopped. Karen waited. "So that what?" she prompted gently. Marisol swallowed. "So that when he filed, there would be less to divide." The room went still in a different way now. Not suspense, but recognition. The shape of what this meant settling over everyone present. Except me. I was still inside the first revelation. He'd lose everything. Because of me. Because I owned it. Karen's next words were careful. "Ms. Alvarez, did Mr. Hart ever state why those assets were initially in his wife's control?" Marisol's lips parted. Daniel's voice cut across the room. "I want counsel." The judge frowned. "You have counsel, Mr. Hart." "No, separate counsel." The shift in tone, from denial to defense, rippled through the courtroom like a current. Karen didn't move. "Your Honor, the witness has not finished answering." The judge looked at Daniel, then at Marisol, then back. "Ms. Alvarez, you may answer." Marisol's eyes shone. She looked at me again, and this time the apology there was unmistakable. "He said," she whispered, "that it was temporary, that early on it had been easier to place certain holdings under her name." My mind struggled to catch up. Early on? Before things changed? Before he changed? Karen's voice softened further. "Did he say why?" Marisol nodded faintly. Daniel took a step forward. "Stop!" The gavel cracked. "Mr. Hart!" But the sound didn't stop her, because she was already speaking. "He said," she said, voice breaking, "that when they started the company, she had the credit, the capital access, the leverage." The world narrowed to a pinpoint. They started the company. My throat closed. Karen's voice asked quietly, "So the original assets were in his wife's name because—" Marisol's gaze held mine. "Because," she said, "because she funded it." The courtroom vanished. Sound dropped away. I heard only the rush of blood in my ears and the echo of years collapsing inward, nights of budgeting, loans signed, risks taken, promises made. Promises. Across the aisles, something moved, Daniel shifting, reaching, reacting, and I finally turned to look at him. When I turned to look at him, the man across the aisle didn't look like my husband anymore.
He looked like someone standing at the edge of something collapsing. Daniel's mouth moved before any sound came out. His face, usually so controlled, so certain, was stripped bare. Fear, yes, but under it, something worse. Recognition. He knew I understood now. Not just the affair, not just the lies, the architecture of it all. The way he'd stood beside me while the company grew from my credit lines and my inheritance and my risk tolerance, then slowly, quietly, began shifting pieces away. Karen's voice cut gently into the silence. Your Honor, the petitioner requests a brief recess. The judge studied both of us, Daniel rigid, me shaking, then nodded. 10 minutes. The gavel fell. Sound returned in a rush. Benches scraping, whispers igniting, papers shuffling, but it all felt distant, underwater. Karen touched my arm. Come with me. I stood, though my legs felt borrowed. The hallway outside the courtroom was colder, too bright, too real. Karen turned to me, eyes sharp now. Are you okay to continue? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because inside, memories were detonating, years recontextualized in seconds. Meetings where Daniel deferred to me in front of investors. Documents he'd asked me to sign because it's cleaner this way. The trust structures he'd framed as tax efficiency. All of it. Mine first, then moved. My chest tightened. I said he depended on him. Karen's expression didn't change, but something dark flickered there. That's what they say when they need the story to run the other way. I shook my head slowly. I thought he loved me. Karen didn't answer, because that wasn't a legal question. Down the hall, Daniel's voice rose, urgent, low, arguing with his attorney. I couldn't hear words, just tone. Panic threaded through anger. I turned toward the sound before I could stop myself. Karen's hand caught my elbow. You don't owe him that look. But I'd already seen him. He stood with his back half turned, one hand in his hair, the other braced against the wall. A posture I knew intimately. The posture of a man who had run out of moves. He sensed me watching. He turned. For a moment, the hallway emptied, just us across distance and fluorescent light. Listen to me, he said, stepping toward me. His attorney hissed his name, but he ignored it. You don't understand what she's implying. I understand perfectly. His eyes searched mine, frantic now. It wasn't like that. I almost laughed, but it hurt too much. I said you'd lose everything, because it was mine. He flinched. And that was answer enough. Don't do this here, he murmured, dropping his voice. We can fix this. We can settle. You don't have to... You already filed, I said. Silence fell between us. He swallowed. I didn't think you'd fight. There it was. The final fracture. Not, I didn't want to hurt you. Not, I made a mistake. I didn't think you'd fight. Something inside me settled then. Not peace, not relief, but clarity. Hard, clean, irreversible. Karen stepped beside me. It's time. Daniel's gaze snapped to her, then back to me. Panic sharpened. If you go back in there... I am, I said. My voice surprised both of us. He reached out, not touching, but close. We built this together. I held his eyes. No, I said softly. We started it together. The difference landed. His face drained again. Behind me, the bailiff called, Court reconvening. Karen turned. Ready? I took one breath, then another. Years of marriage, trust, betrayal, ownership, illusion, all compressing into the space of a doorway. I looked at Daniel one last time, the man I had loved, the man who had planned to leave once the numbers were safe.
See you inside, I said, and I walked back into the courtroom without him.